It's Talking Baseball Australia. It's baseball updates you'll really love. The MLB and ABL news you want. With Paul Morgan and Dan Vaughn. It's baseball's best mate all year round. From the batter's box to the mound.
Well, happy ABL Round 5, everybody. It's time for Baseball's Best Mate, Talking Baseball Australia. Dan Vaughn with you, Paul Morgan, as we do this thing once again. We connect the dots. He's in the West. I'm, the other direction in Texas. We connect the dots right here on Talking Baseball Australia. And glad you're along. Round 5, Round 4, the Bloods. First off, you okay this morning?
Yeah, good this morning. Nice weather. The ABL's back in town this weekend. The cricket's in town, Australia and Pakistan as well. So, it's all happening here at the moment. It's summertime in the West. The weather's good. Skies are blue. Beach water's warm. What more could you want, DV?
Yeah, I saw our friend Michael Dixon, who's over there in Melbourne. He was posting on one of his stories, and he had a picture of one of the downtown streets with the Christmas lights and decorations. Of course, he's used to being in the North America this time of year where it's a little chillier and it does sort of look and feel like Christmas. There it looks like Christmas on the streets, but it doesn't feel like it. And I love this time of year in Australia. Granted, it's Christmas time, but what better time of year to have great weather and a great holiday and great baseball too. One of my favorite things about being down there. So we're going to look into round number 4 a little quickly and go to round 5. Rest of the show, I got a couple of questions here for you. Brisbane, they're the new threat to Adelaide. Number 2, Takahashi Haka. I can't even say it right, partner.
Hayakawa.
Say it for me.
Hayakawa is
there you go. Hayakawa.
We actually did talk to it.
My Japanese, even though my daughter's in Japan, and I should be much better Japanese. But Hayakawa, is he for real? Yeah.
Yes,
he for real?
He is.
And then old journalism, talk about that quickly. I've got another interesting take on a young man who's still very young in this game and doing a great job out west. And I want to clarify the trade/transfer story that came out. Also, some breaking news happening this week as well. Another young man going to the Major League organization, Cincinnati Reds. We'll talk about that as well. But let's first off jump in. Last week, your biggest takeaway from round 4, I think you and I sort of went in the very same way. Your takeaway coming out of round 4.
I think, firstly, from a Brisbane perspective, we thought that they'd sweep up there. Like, it's not as easy to do as you and I know. Like, even though we thought they would get the sweep or at least a series win, to get the sweep. I mean, I think at this stage, Canberra's probably the only team you can kind of put a line through, I would think, and it's a bit of a 5-horse race, albeit, all in different positions. But Brisbane, I think, that home field advantage, and we've talked about that over the last couple of weeks, DV, of how huge that advantage is up there in Viacom Stadium. And they showed that, and they are a better team than Canberra. They should have beaten Canberra, but I think to sweep, I just like where that ball club's going. I think that'll be super interesting for them out west. Probably the second biggest takeaway for me, Sydney's offense is their offensive woes were bad on the weekend. I mean the Heat. I mean, to be fair, the Heat should have swept that series, but they had their little hiccup in game 4, but Sydney went 30 innings with only scoring 1 run, which is, which you can't do. And they just couldn't seem to get their bats going. But to me, Sydney looks like a team, if they can somehow figure out this week moving forward, I think their pitching's really good. They've just got to figure out that offense. And if that offense can get hot, I actually think they're a chance. But right now, because, I mean, if their offense would have got hot, I think they would have taken that series, even though the Heat were very good. And I think my other takeaway was the starting pitching for the Heat was outstanding. That was probably the best starting pitching I've seen for them in a long time. So, big takeaways. And of course, the Adelaide-Melbourne series, there was obviously a lot of weather affecting in that series as well. But yeah, I think the big takeaways for me: Brisbane, the real deal. Heat's rotation's the real deal. And also, if Sydney's offense can get hot, they'll be okay.
I will work in reverse with you. I was impressed with the rotation out west. In this league, you can get two guys, in this case, in Beardsley, in Hayakawa, who can give you back-to-back outings like that. And, of course, Warwick Suppold was really good in the opener. I thought that Andy Kyle playing those, letting Warwick go the opener, the veteran guy to kind of set the tone. But on that doubleheader, two lockdown guys in those shorter innings, shorter doubleheader days, your bullpen is going to be very key. And the more innings you get out of your rotation on those doubleheaders are key. And I thought that was a great move by Andy Kyle and by the Heat to lock down the doubleheader. And that was impressive. Their starting rotation, phenomenal over the weekend. And then Brisbane. The Bandits, I've got them at 7-1 at home. They've won 5 in a row. And it's what we talked about last week. And it was boom. It hadn't happened yet, but boom, it does happen. Their home field is so unique. They're 11-5. They're just a half game behind Adelaide. A big series coming up this week in the West. The Bandits are for real. And I'm with you. The first question is Brisbane a threat to Adelaide? Absolutely they are. They showed it. And again, both places, the beach and out there in Brisbane, they both are unique home field advantages. Very close ballparks. Both teams play great at home. And I really believe whoever can grab that home field is going to have a huge leg up for the Shield. But the Bandits, who've done it over the years and really have built their ball club to play that ballpark, and they were impressive. And like you, watching back I did something this week I haven't done. Usually I get up and watch the games live, but I thought, you know what? Let me watch them on replay, kind of fast forward. And I'm like you. If Sydney had any kind of offense, they had any kind of offense. Wow. But currently the latter, you mentioned Canberra 3-12 at the bottom, Sydney 7-9, Perth 7-8, along with Melbourne 7-8. That's that bottom of the order. Then you've got Adelaide at 11-4, and then Brisbane 11-5, and it's a 5-team race. Although Canberra is a series went away from getting back in it. But again, I'm with you. I think my biggest takeaway from all that this weekend, and in case you missed it, the weather did affect that Melbourne-Adelaide series. Adelaide winning that series, Sydney, Perth winning the series at home. All the home series went the way of the home teams. Yep. So that was sort of holding the court right there. So I think we've answered question number one without even diving the numbers. But I think it just shows you we could dive into some numbers we had to. But Brisbane seems to be the team that we talked about last week. Who can challenge Adelaide? Brisbane appears to be the one that can.
Yeah, and look, I think this weekend is fascinating because this series for them is it's the longest road trip in baseball. Brisbane to Adelaide. It's incredibly long. I mean, for anyone in North America, it's sort of it's like going from Boston to San Diego in sort of distance wise. So it's a long trip. And look, if they can come, of course, and what will be interesting, Ryan Bollinger gets to start probably Friday night against against Tim Kennelly, of course, TK equaling that 60 home run record, the former Braves teammates, not the Atlanta Braves, but the Melville Braves, the Braves baseball club here in State League. And I think there's to me, this series, if Brisbane walk away here going 3-1 up, or alternatively the Heat go 3-1 up, you start to go, okay, I get a sense of where this season's going. But look, I think Adelaide, who've got Canberra this week, will obviously, I think they'll take care of business, even though it's at the Fort, and you never know what's going to happen at the Fort. I'm really fascinated for this weekend's series.
Quickly, the offensive numbers, Perth is starting to hit better. 252, they're just behind Adelaide at 254. Brisbane drops down at 234, so that's your top three offensively. Melbourne 225. I still think they will hit eventually. Canberra 218. Sydney, you mentioned earlier the numbers offensively, only hitting 200 on the nose.
Yeah.
And that's not going to cut it in this league.
No.
Pitching wise,
And then that,
too, you go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, and that if you're a Sydney fan, I mean, that's the one. I mean, their bats get hot, they could win the Shield. I truly believe. I think they've got the pitching to do it. I think that if their bats get hot, they can win the Shield. But there's a big but though.
Big butt. Pitching wise, Adelaide has the league's lowest ERA, 2.34. Melbourne 2.79. Sydney 2.80. Again, they're right there on those Blue Sox. That batting average is just. If you're going to hit 200, you're better off leading the league in home runs or leading the league in stolen bases or some kind of category that can kickstart some offense. But if you're 200 across the board and kind of down toward the bottom, you just steadily across the board, that hurts. You can't score any runs. Brisbane 3.44, Canberra 4.99. Perth lowered their ERA, or got it lowered to 4.66.
Yeah.
Largely due in part to the next thing we're going to talk about here on Talking Baseball Australia. Baseball's best mate, Dan Vaughn and Paul Morgan, is the question. The second question was in Takahashi Hakawa. There's my text in me. Hakawa. That texted in me, making his presence known. Now, this is a guy, bio line-wise, this is a young man who is the classic, Japanese pitcher. He's, coming from the big leagues in Japan, but he's got time also in the highest level. If you know how the Nippon works, you got the big leagues in the Nippon League. That's the big leagues. That's going to be the top level, and right below it, you got the Central and the Western and the Eastern, I believe, if I get that correctly. If you're the Central Pacific, that's the big leagues. There goes the dog there. And you got the other two, the AAA, basically. He split time last year at both locations. You had a chance to see him, and Perth has had some really good arms over the years. I think of Mike Ekstrom years ago. Dylan Unsworth has been great. Virgil Vasquez has spent some time at other stops as well in Melbourne. They've got another guy to go with the Warwick Supholds, who've also been an ace in that staff. This guy looks like he might be every bit as intriguing and as solid as other guys. Those names I threw out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only downside is I believe he's only in the country, which has been not a scoop because it's been reported. I believe he's only in the country until the end of December, so they'll only get him for another couple of series. But yeah, look, I actually thought, I think I said on the broadcast, like that was the last person I think I saw dominate as much was Mike Ekstrom. Mike Ekstrom was just striking guys out and just looked like he'd never hit trouble. I mean, Hayakawa never hit trouble. He never hit rocky waters. I mean, I don't even think in that first, if memory serves me, I don't even think anyone went down to the bullpen on that whole game. I mean, he was in cruise control that entire time. 10 strikeouts and work that off-speed stuff, the curve and, these fastballs work. But he just had complete control. And I think it might have been the first time he'd thrown to Martinez as well. So, to have that combination going was huge. But yeah, as I said, it was the first time I've ever watched the game that I don't even think, I think by the time they got to the seventh inning, I still don't even think there was anyone in the bullpen.
And that's what I'm saying. That's why the doubleheader I mentioned earlier, the doubleheaders are so tricky. Because, and I can tell you from the American Association's standpoint, managers hate them. Steve Montgomery in Sioux City, he dreads them. Bobby Post, the pitching coach, they dread them. The good thing is you've got in the association 2 7 innings. You can grab yourself 2 really good wins. Most of the time, though, you get yourself a split. In those terrible times, you get swept, which is even worse. I mean, it can be a really good day for you, a really, really bad day for you, and it can tax the pitching staff for weeks on end going forward. It happens in the big leagues as well. When a doubleheader crops up, you got to bring a guy up usually from AAA or AA to make a spot start. It's a real challenge for your staff. Now, in the ABL, it's a necessary evil. And you've got to, a lot of places got to squeeze the 4 games in 3 because you want to get the state games in and on your Sundays and all that. I get that. But what really, to me, makes it intriguing, and your bullpen not having to go down and do any warming up, that's an off day in game one, right? So your Penn's got an off day in game one. They don't got to do nothing. And then you got game two, and that really gives you a huge advantage. Is suddenly you've got a lockdown guy in game one, you got game two coming, and you can really take a series when you've got a situation like that. I thought what Andy Kyle did there to put Beardsley did them back to back was outstanding work, but it's the importance of give the bullpen rest. And if there's one weakness that the Heat have, it is the pen. We do know that, and you saw it firsthand. Your take on Beardsley real quick.
Yeah, no, he's another guy. He's just a workhorse, just a machine. And I think he's one of these guys that just fits in so well at the ABL. Throws strikes, throws hard, like hits his spots, doesn't walk too many guys. He was brilliant. But I mean, and you talk, and I think the big part about that game, which you talk about Hayakawa throwing the complete game. Sydney were in the unfortunate spot. Matt Ray got the start. They gave up that grand slam to Bowie, but really, he pitched okay. But they were in a spot where they had to use Kyle Glagolski, and he was mint once he come into the game. But they had to burn him in that first game, and it was a game that you had on the opposite. And this is, and as you said, this is a tricky part about double headers. They had to burn Glagolski on a situation that. If he probably pitches Saturday night, maybe the result goes different, but they don't have the arms. And, you've got this Hayakawa just rolling right along. And again, if that goes, I would imagine the blueprint will be the same this week. Why wouldn't it be? And then, it's a huge, huge deal and huge advantage. But and obviously the Heat pen, I think Tucker Smith coming into that pen is huge. Tucker Smith, of course, I think he's had 196 strikeouts in state league last year, kind of had one opportunity with the Heat. I was always wondering why he didn't have more opportunities with the Heat, but had one opportunity with the Heat. And then and he was rock solid behind Beardsley. And that Beardsley-Smith combination was outstanding. So, but I think still there's question marks on their pen, but it was all
you mentioned
you got to get that. You can get that.
You mentioned Tucker Smith. You go back to our Call the Pin earlier this week where that was played on our channels and on our friends' channels as well. To close out that whole doubleheader conversation, Sydney's 7-9. They get a split. Well, okay. Well, you're 8-8. You get both games, and in Perth's case, the Heat getting both games shifts that whole series and also shifts the standings. The reason they're ahead of them in the ladder is because that doubleheader sweep. If you get the sweep, you don't want to get swept. And if you get a sweep, that's huge. And that really, you're going to come back and look 3 weeks from now, that's going to be a huge sweep because getting 2 in one day, getting a series win is huge. The show is Talking Baseball Australia Live, where baseball's best made. He's Paul Morgan. I'm Dan Vaughn. We're glad you're along here as we get ready for round number 5. Let's jump into round number 5 right here. I got Melbourne, Canberra, and I've got actually that's incorrect. I don't know why I wrote down that Melbourne, Canberra because I've got Melbourne and Sydney, and it'll be Adelaide and Canberra. Is that correct? And then Brisbane is
Melbourne, Sydney, Adelaide are in Canberra.
Yeah, I don't know why I wrote down Melbourne. I got Melbourne playing 2 series this weekend, which is impossible unless they got an A and a B squad. But to me, obviously, anytime Melbourne and Sydney play in anything, whether it be bowling, field hockey, tiddlywinks, whatever it is, beer drinking at the pub, whatever it is, whenever the folks from New South Wales and the Victorians get together, it's always delicious in any sport. Should be this weekend, although this is a series for the Aces to really get healthy. It's also a series for Sydney to get healthy as well. Somebody can get healthy this weekend.
Spot on. And I just feel that Sydney might have turned the corner a bit on that. They were down and out. They were completely down and out in that whole entire series. As I said, they had 1 run through 30 innings. Kobe Foster, who was the starting pitcher for the Heat, had thrown a no-hitter into the 7th inning. They string together a couple of hits. They string together 5 runs in that inning. They string together 6. They win that ball game from being 5-0 down. You could see the dugout, the confidence had lit. They were so flat, but then all of a sudden they've gone, super confident, and they've got the guy. They've got some of those guys like Artis, Akita. They've got the guys that can have like that can kind of get on base and do something and do hits. And I just feel like their offense, the whole time I watched it, I just thought their offense has to click at some point. Their offense has to click, and I think, unfortunately, for the Aces' perspective, I feel like it might be this weekend at home. I know it's sort of the last series before Christmas break. They got a lot of festivities going on there, I believe, as well. So I just feel like that their offense is going to click this week. I think their pitching is really good, so I don't think they're going to bleed too many runs. And I just feel like this weekend for Sydney is going to be an offensive win. I think they'll win the series 3-1. And I just feel like this time next week, we could be sitting here talking about, okay, Sydney, they're a challenger.
I'm going to tell you just from my standpoint, I think that's a split only because I just think that there's two questions here. A, and you brought it up last week on the show, we kept waiting for the Aces last year to sort of become the Aces, right? We kept waiting. They're going to be the Aces eventually because they've done it before. Yeah. They're going to be the Aces. Well, the Aces have not been the Aces yet consistently. I think they're going to be halfway the Aces this weekend. I think Sydney's going to get halfway healthy as well. And this question of, is Sydney going to be able to make a run? Is Melbourne going to be able to do what they do? Going to continue on down the road to the very end? I think these two will cancel each other out. Although I'm with you, I do believe the Blue Sox offense, if anything else, they're due to score some runs. I mean, you can't sit the blackjack table or whatever that long, or the roulette wheel's maybe a better one to sit there and spin it around and see it come up on black 12 times in a row. Eventually, it's going to hit red, right? Eventually. And I think from that standpoint, I think that split series this weekend, it really, but the opportunity's there.
Absolutely.
If whoever wins this series, and they can win the series, can really help put themselves firmly. The winner of the series firmly puts themselves in the mix. If Sydney loses or Melbourne loses, different story. Adelaide at Canberra. Adelaide gets the Canberra Cats. Canberra's kind of circle the wagon. The Fort, maybe the best metaphor for this whole series, because I mean Canberra, it's they're 3-12. They dropped 5 in a row. It's now or never time. If they're going to look up and Santa's going to come by and skip them. I mean, I've been cold for those poor boys. I mean, it's time. If you're going to make a run, you better do it at home. You better do it now. You got to win 3 or 4 against the team that's the best in the league right now.
Yeah, and look, I don't think that spot on. I mean, I think they've got the exact wrong team at the exact wrong time. I think, they need to get, as you said, they need to win the series. I don't think they can win the series. I think Adelaide wins that series, but they just don't. They just look like they're missing a couple pieces, Canberra, and I mean, look, there's always one team. Sydney was it last year. There's always one team that sort of drops away a bit. And I just feel, unfortunately, because there's some great people at camp. We've got a lot of time for Woz and Coleman in the booth, and the Fort's a great place, rocking place, one of the best places in the country to go watch a game of baseball. Like the Fort is, if you're ever in Canberra and you haven't been to a Cavs game, or you're thinking about it, going to a Cavs game, get down to a Cavs game because it's a lot of fun there in Canberra. But look, they're up against the powerhouse that is Adelaide, and I still firmly believe Adelaide is in a category of its own at the moment. I think they're the runaway leader. I think then you've got the block of the Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, maybe Perth sort of block. You've kind of got those 4 teams behind it. But I think Adelaide, hard to, again, even on the weekend, it's hard to fault any part of their game right now. And look, if anything, they haven't had the consistency they'd like just due to weather. So I think they'll come out all guns blazing. I think they win the series. I think they're a chance to sweep. I think they're probably more likely win the series 3-1. But I mean, they're the best until they're not, as you would always say, DV.
Yeah, right. I agree with you. It's a last stand. I will. It's hard to pick against Adelaide. I mean, as much as I'd like to see Canberra get back in the mix, I just think Adelaide wins that one 3-1. So that's my call right there. Before we go to the last one, you got a little attention there from me because you mentioned about going to the Fort. I encourage anyone watching us in Brisbane, New South Wales, wherever you're watching us, if you're a fan of the game and I go to one game, how about go to 2 this weekend? Go to 2.
Yep.
I mean, to
Yep.
grow this thing organically, grassroots
Yep.
wise, we got to go to 2. We got to, and eventually go to 3. And
Yep.
just go see the team near you. And if you
Yeah.
got a
No.
street league team you like, I just think
Yeah.
we all, as a baseball family, from east to west, north to south, go to a ballpark, go see a team in the league, or see a state league game.
I agree, and and look, as much as I appreciate and love people tuning into the broadcast, I'd love to see a packed stadium in Perth. Like I think like that place rocks when it's packed, and the crowds haven't been what they, like it's obviously a bit hard in December, and it'll be hard this weekend as well. A lot of Christmas parties, a lot of things as well, but nothing beats and anyone in any ballpark in Australia, at any ballpark in the world, when the weather's good, the ballpark's rocking, it's packed, everyone's having a good time. Like the adult beverages are they're tipping in. The burgers are sizzling, the hot dogs they're good. I mean, yeah, the coffee's going down, double shots. But like there's no, like at DV, like there's no better place. There's no happier place in the world than a rocking ballpark.
I'm smiling. There's no doubt about it. My Rangers World Series, I can tell you, no
Of
happier
course, the
place, and
Rangers.
they win as well. I'm having flashbacks of the old state league kids, the under 12s, were doing the sausage sizzle, bringing the sausages up to the snags up to the booth. The Brisbane and Perth series here on Baseball's Best Mate. Talking Baseball Australia. Wow. You're going to get a chance to call this thing. There'll be several games of this series. I don't know what your broadcast schedule is yet, but
they're all games. I think we're all games this week. We're
all
all
games
in
on the stream. Okay, all games on the stream. By the way, great work last week, partner. Just great work to have you doing your thing.
Appreciate that, Steve. Very rusty. It's one of those things that if you don't do it for a while, you get pretty rusty pretty quick. But it's
you nailed it.
Yeah.
But it's going to be fun. This one here, this is a big stakes here because and I'll give you, I'll just start first. If you're Perth, you win a series here, you're going to get above 500. You're going to probably put yourself in third position, if not on Brisbane's heels, for second position in the ladder. Brisbane can stay pace, perhaps with some help. And never know what can happen to Canberra, but at least in worst case scenario, Brisbane gets a series win. The Bandits are going to stay right there a half game behind. Huge series, huge stakes. It's a big one. I mean, these two teams are going to play twice, and they're big. He gets the first crack at him at home. You got TK looking for that one more home run. By the way, congratulations to the legend himself getting that 60th home run, and he's just been phenomenal what he's done. He is the GOAT. I don't care what anybody says. He is the greatest of all time in our game in Australia. You've got that. You've got, just the whole energy of what may be building out west. It's a big series. I think this one's going to come down to, Brisbane's been on the road. The Bandits are 4-4. Not bad at all. As a matter of fact, you're 4-4 on the road, and you're 7-1 at home. You've got a chance to win a Shield every time. I mean, every year. I think Brisbane, for them, it's not as big of a series when it's more like they play 500. I think the pressure is all on the Heat here. The Heat got to have a series win. You got to win back-to-back series at home because you've already lost one series at home. You've got several big road swings coming up. You got to get these home games now. Build yourself a cushion. If you can win back-to-back home series, it allows you to kind of drop a series or two down the road. It's huge for Perth. The pressure's all the Heat. They got to deliver. I assume the rotation will stay the same. The offense is doing what they're doing, and there's some exciting young prospects in Ports are doing that. We hadn't talked much about them as well, but I won't dive into all that. But I just think the pressure thing is huge, and Brisbane's got absolutely zero pressure on them. It's all in the West.
I couldn't agree more with you with your take, DV. Like you're absolutely spot on. And I think the biggest thing, from a Brisbane perspective, is a split is a win, no doubt. Now the Heat are going to look at it. Their 3 road series that they've got to come. They've got to go to Brisbane, extremely tough. They've got to go to Sydney, which is also like a tough road trip because it's not, again, like, you've got to go into Sydney and go up to Blacktown. Like it's a tough ballpark to win in. and Adelaide. There's their other. I mean, they've got 3 really tricky road series. This is, and I completely agree with you, DV. I think all the pressure on this series is squarely on the Heat. They've got the opportunity to kind of use this as a launch pad for the rest of their season. But yeah, I think from a Brisbane perspective, let's take 2 and get back home, and that's all we want to do. But for the Heat, you got to win this series. You just got to win the series to kind of keep on keeping on. And boy, I think it's if the starting rotation can do what they did against Sydney, like it would be fascinating. But and from a Brisbane perspective, I'm sure they're watching that tape of Hayakawa and watching the tape of Kobe Foster and watching the tape of Tyler Beardsley, and thinking to themselves, how can we get at these guys? We've got to get at these. The key to beating Perth, I would think, if I'm Brisbane, I would be thinking the key to getting to Perth is we've got to get to this starting pitcher early. We get to this starting pitcher early, put pressure on their pen, we're a real chance to win this series. And from a Heat perspective, I thought what I was also impressed with them last week is, the long ball wasn't necessarily their friend, but they strung together hits and they got guys on base. They consistently were getting 10 plus hits a game. Like they were, and the younger guys, Neomar Ochoa Jr. and Carlos Sanchez and Ryan Spikes, those guys look like they're getting better. They look better and more comfortable at the plate. Jake Bowie had probably the series of the weekend, no doubt. Tim Kennelly, continues to get better, and they just the guys. There's little stuff there. Even a young guy, and Guy Belair talked about it on the broadcast. Byron Armstrong, young guy from Wanneroo, a couple of sack bunts, loads of speed on the base path. Look, what I love about this series, there's no series I enjoy more, DV, where you could literally go, I could see Perth sweeping, I could see Brisbane sweeping, I could see 3-1 Brisbane, 3-1 Perth. I could see this as split. And you could make an argument for every possible outcome for this series.
And none of those outcomes would shock me. I would not sit there and go, wow, how that happened. It's not like, for example, Canberra was to sweep Adelaide, I'd be shocked, right? That would be a shocking development. But those outcomes in the West, pulled out of a hat, any of them could happen. It should be a delicious series. And you have a leaning one way or the other there?
Look, I think you have to get. I think you can only lean on the split. I mean, really, I think any other way, you're just kind of guessing. If anything, I think the Heat could win this series 3-1. That's probably more where I'm going, just because of, as we've spoken about, they've been at home 2 weeks in a row as well. Not traveling this week is a big deal. Being traveling to Brisbane, and that flight from Brisbane to Perth is a horrendous flight. They always, for whatever reason, every airline uses the narrow body plane there. It's uncomfortable.
It's just unbelievable.
Yeah,
I've done that flight, and it's and I've talked about this on our broadcast in the States over here. There's a song called Flyover States. It's a country song, I believe, by I think Jason Aldean sings it. It's a famous country song. And the flyover states are the ones between New York and California. It's like Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa. What it is, when you're flying over, you don't see a lot of light. You see small lights, a dot here, a dot there. It's not like when you're flying up the East Coast. You fly up the East Coast from Atlanta, you go Atlanta, and you got Charlotte, and then into D.C., and it's nothing but lights the whole way. But you do the flyover route, there's nothing out there. And I've been sitting there on that narrow body when we're all standing up, kind of talking in the aisle there once we take off. And you've been with me on this, and you look down, and there's nothing but dark skies below you in a nighttime flight back from the east. And how many times it's flyover country? No lights at all out there until you get to the west. It's that crazy of a trip. You're right, man. Before I'm going to table something for down the road. I was going to get to this. We're running out of time here because I want to get 2 little small things here. But I want to throw this out there, the shift in media coverage. We're going to get that a little bit later on, though, but old school, new school meeting of the minds, and it seems like we're going to get to that eventually, but one of the things I miss a lot of the features we used to get in the ABL. You and I wrote them for the Heat over the years, the features of players, and really the quality. The AI is taking over a lot of that. I get that, but some of the features we're not getting. I'd like to learn more about some of the players. We'll table that for down the road. The other things is a couple things this week. You may have seen this. A lot of you fans may have seen this here. I'm talking Baseball Australia, baseball's best mate. But another young man is going to the U.S. Drew Davies out of South Australia was a youngster that nearly made the under-18 team as a 16-year-old, but he's finally heading his way, got a contract with the Reds organization, a young man who signed his contract there at West Beach in front of the friends and family. And, of course, Donald Lutz, who's the scout, former Brisbane legend and former Red in the big leagues. Lutz is scouting for the
Yeah.
Reds. It's always good to see a young man go that way. I'm going to segue to a young man who went that way in a moment, but just thoughts. Anytime a kid signs, it's a big deal.
Yeah, I
But I
think
would
it's
even throw it out there.
yeah.
When a kid signs from Australia, it's a big deal. And if a kid goes to college, it's a big deal. It's always a big deal when a young man gets a chance.
100%. And I think, that's the thing. It's like the odds are so, stacked against you a little bit, coming from so far away. But like I think like and we talked about this a little bit on our broadcast the other day. Like, Australian baseball is in actually, you watch these guys with the Reds and this Travis Bazana in college who could go, like the kid from Sydney. There's rumors that he'll go top 5 in the draft. A kid from Australia playing college ball over there at the moment, and he could go top 5 in the draft, which would be huge for baseball in this country as well, over there at Oregon State at the moment. And just like another kid signing, and you got Curtis Mead up, and I just feel like Australian baseball, maybe this is the effect of like 12 years of the ABL competition, and also secondly how important the ABL competition is for development in this country, and how important you talked about earlier, get bums on seats at the game. Like, I mean, like kids can get inspired to play out there, and like kids are getting inspired. And I just feel like Australian baseball, for all the kind of, I suppose, negativity that gets thrown around a lot with baseball, and yes, like the sport's no doubt got its flaws and its areas to go, but you start looking at these little stories and these guys getting signed and guys getting to the big leagues and guys, playing a high level college and thinking about being number 1 draft picks and your potentials, and you just kind of go, the system's working, and like things are working, and it's just, it's great. There's some great achievements happening in the country, and great achievements happening with some of these kids. And it's a huge congratulations for, getting signed for one of 30 teams. I mean, there's a whole world of Latin American players, American players, Canadian players, Japanese players, South Korean players. Like there's, and Australia is a small player in all that, but, to catch the eye of a Red Scout and, have one of 30 teams sign you. I mean, it's a big deal.
He's Paul Morgan. I'm Dan Vaughn. We're baseball's best mate, rounding third inning for home. Scott is shooting a couple things before I get to the final topic. TK on the verge. We've already talked about that. Quickly, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention John Kennedy and Lachlan Wells. Those guys don't allow earned runs, by the way. They just don't do it.
Yeah.
They're in Adelaide. They just don't do it. The earned run for those two, we talked a lot about the offense for the Giants, but their pitching staff of those two. I just looked at Wells' numbers a moment ago. No earned runs in 22 innings.
He's been unreal. And Kennedy and Wells just lights out.
And again, and before we, whether it be Brisbane, Perth, whoever, but if you got those two back-to-back against 2 solid starters of Beardsley and whoever, I mean, it makes for delicious baseball. It makes for great stuff, great postseason playing with the Claxton Shield. The other piece of the puzzle, and I'm going to go back, it's a little bit on the subject we just had with Davies, the Bowser. Jake Valley he's 11 RBIs. I don't know where that puts him overall in the league right now, but young man who I feel like he's like 36. He's only 26. The young man is having a phenomenal run right now. He's he's gotten better as he's gotten older. And a lot of times you see guys that go to the States, they peak and they kind of drop off when they come home. He's gotten better as a ball player as he's gotten older. He's really good. He's really, really good right now.
Yeah, 100%. And he's tied with your man Josh Altman, Greg Bird, and Azuma as on 11 RBIs. So
There you go.
he's up there at top of the table.
Yeah, it goes back, and I was looking at his numbers, and we're running out of time here, but I was looking at his numbers from his career, and this is an example of sort of what you and I talk about. He went over as a very young man, 17 years old, and he only got, I believe, 60 some odd games in affiliated ball and was sent back home. And I know the first year he was in complex ball with most of the Dominican players, the Astros. And I saw him off when he was, in that early years. He comes back. He's hit since back now. This is on the top of my head math. Since he's been back and playing full time, he's hitting 280. But again, this year 318. Last year 291. He drove in. He's got 41 RBIs in his last 40, 52 ABL games. Pretty solid right there. And I will just throw this out there, and I'm not, and Jake, I've never had this conversation, and he knows how much I love this guy, and I'm a big fan of him. He's an example of, a lot of times guys get signed and it doesn't work out, but it doesn't mean they can't play. And he can play. And as he's gotten older, he's gotten better. And I just wondered, I throw out with Davies or whoever, you look at a guy like Robbie Glendenning who went over and became a college player. The route's different for everybody. This could open up a whole different conversation for us down the road. But, it's about getting opportunities. He's getting an opportunity now. He's a mainstay on Team Australia. I mean, his bat must be there for Team Australia. I mean, he has to be. And he's a guy that you kind of thought of when Team Australia came out. The roster came out a year and a half ago. Was sort of like, he's a mainstay now. And it's funny how this game works, because eventually you figure it out. I think he's figured it out.
I do too, and he's a great guy, great supporter of the show as well. And I know he'll be tuning in, so appreciate all Bowser. But and I love watching him getting better and better. And I think it's great and great for the game and great for the Heat. And it's going to be a big weekend. And DV, I'm going to have to love and leave you because I have to run. But another great show. Let you wrap up.
All right, wrap it up. There he goes, Paul Morgan right there, baseball's best mate right there. Let him go as we come your way, baseball's best mate. Our 12th season right here on the air. And again, appreciate Paul taking the time to stop. And he's got to go. He's a corporate guy. He's got to run that corporate meeting. I'm going to wrap it up here. There are a lot of ways to do what we do, developing our game in Australia. And I think Paul was right on. We all have a role in it, whether it be as a fan, whether it be as a coach or an umpire or a player. We all have a place, media person, whatever. It's all there. And it's going to take us all. And it's helping navigate the system, because it sounds like on paper, I signed with a big league organization. But it's not for everybody. Some kids got to go to college. Some kids need more reps that way. It's all different upon each player is different. And each one of us have a role in this game. Each one of us, as, again, fan, observer, administrator, whatever it is you do that is part of the baseball system or the baseball family in Australia, we have a role. We all need to continue to push our role and push our role forward to further the great game in Australia, because we know we're up against certain things sometimes. That's no front page news. But it doesn't mean we can't grow this thing. We can't see the next crop of big leaguers or another big league exhibition regular season games being played in Australia, or more kids in college, or big TV deals, or bigger stadiums. We can have these things, but we each got to keep pushing forward and forging on forward in Australia. Baseball's best mate, talking baseball Australia. I'm Dan Vaughn. We close it out here on this round 5 edition. Hope your team wins this weekend. Great stuff coming up this weekend. You've got Adelaide and Canberra, Melbourne and Sydney, and Brisbane is at Perth. Big thanks to Paul Morgan. By the way, you better follow Paulie this week. He will be on the air in the West. Boy, great work last week. He and Guy Belair, and I'm sure others will stop by and join them in the broadcast. Looking forward to being with them later on in January, perhaps, or doing some radio down the road as well. But for Paul Morgan, I'm Dan Vaughn. And I say this every time to our fans in Sioux City, and I mean it bottom of my heart. Let's be better fans tomorrow than we were today. Let's show more love tomorrow we did today going forward in 2023 and 24. Hope your team wins this weekend. We'll see you next time, everybody.
Buy me some peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if I ever get back for its root. Root for the